Welcome, everyone, to our latest NCAA social series. I'm Andy Katz, pleased to be joined by Gloria Nevarez, who is the commissioner of the West Coast Conference, known as the WCC, and Ben Rodriguez. He is currently in the Athletic Foundation office at Georgia Southern, but also La Casa. We're going to talk about that here momentarily. It is Hispanic Heritage Month. And Gloria, I want to first start with you. You and I have talked about this issue quite a bit. You are a trailblazer across the country in college athletics. First off, where do we stand right now in terms of Hispanics within administrative positions, maybe even get down into the coaching level within college athletics?
You know, Andy, and I think your question kind of highlights one of the issues is I don't really have a lot of data on that. You know, I'm sure it exists somewhere, but anecdotally, I don't feel like our numbers are very robust or consistently tracked. I don't know, Ben, if you have a different outlook on it, but I just feel like there isn't as much information.
Yeah, for sure. There's a few different organizations that are tracking this. The NCAA actually tracks it on their own. And the Institute for Diversity and Ethics in Sport, or TIDES, at the University of Central Florida, they also track on this. And so I actually have a few numbers pulled up here. So among our student athletes, that 6.2% of all NCAA Division 1, 2, and 3 student athletes, it's 6.2% Hispanic. 2.3% of administrators at the assistant AD level or higher, only 2% of ADs, and then head coaches, you're talking roughly 2.3%. And conference commissioners, as far as I know, is just one in Gloria. So she's definitely a trailblazer.
So with those numbers not being obviously representative, what are your thoughts when you hear those? I mean, we sort of asked for the data. We got it, Gloria. What are your thoughts?
I know. Great job, Ben. Right there. With the
And that was unscripted, by the way.
I know. Clearly more prepared than I am. So good on you, Ben. I do think, you know, when I started in the business, what feels like 100 COVID years ago, when we talked about race and diversity in athletics, it was really a black and white question. African-American organization, support services, and it was really about African-American representation. So I think when I first started, the conversation really wasn't around about other ethnicities, Hispanic, Asian. And so now I feel like, especially with what's going on in society, we're elevating the conversation. I see more of a pipeline entering our business. And when I go to conventions and meetings, I see young people and I'm approached by them of various backgrounds. So it's encouraging, but clearly, you know, still underrepresented.
So to that point, and Ben, I want you to chime in on this as well, Gloria, and anecdotally, because we've had these conversations on our social series about African Americans and Asian Americans. And notably, when we had this conversation with former America East Commissioner Amy Huchthausen, who was a trailblazer as an Asian American conference commissioner before she transitioned to now another career out of college athletics. You know, there are many times where she was pretty much the only person who was an Asian American at the table in conversations. So I'm just curious anecdotally how you have found that throughout the course of your career as an athlete and as you worked your way up as an administrator, Gloria first, and then you, Ben.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember being in one of the first classes of the NCAA Fellows program and got assigned a mentor. And at the time, it was one of the only Hispanic athletic directors in Rudy Davalos at the University of New Mexico. And so he was a real strong influence on me. And I would have never met him but for the NCAA program. And two, I thought he was really good about, you know, always returning my calls, being there for me, answering, you know, questions about navigating the space. I would hope that people going through the program have more than just one person to assign to their upcoming class of Latino or Latino administrators.
Yeah, you know, and for me, I wanted to highlight something Gloria mentioned before about when we, so often when we talk about diversity in college athletics, it's been black and white, right? For me in my career, just to be honest, I can only think of one or two folks administratively who have been Hispanic that I worked with, right? And so that's been quite a challenge, right? We always hear about representation and how that matters to folks, right? So for me, I'll just tell you, it's something that I've thought about quite a bit. I think there are certain groups that have figured it out and have done a really good job getting their folks in their demographic at the table. And I think now, as Gloria mentioned, other groups are really starting to really do that well, right? If you had asked me a year and a half ago, hey, Ben, tell me about some Hispanic administrators, I couldn't have named any at all, right? But now, especially with Casa, and I know we'll get into that later, and I'm starting to see a pipeline of other Hispanic up and comers, that we hope will take the lead from Gloria and Lisa Campos, Richard Duran, and some others, that are where we want to get to eventually.
So I want to actually go back to, you mentioned Rudy. I knew Rudy many moons ago when I was working down there as well. But Gloria, you played at UMass. Ben, you played at Stony Brook. What were your experiences like as Hispanics playing in, Amherst and sort of middle of New York, if you will? Gloria?
Well, I'm from the Bay Area, California, so I went to a very diverse high school, and I signed my letter of intent late, so I missed orientation. And in my first week on campus, I got a letter that said, "Dear student of color." And I had never heard that term before. And I assumed we all got assigned a color maybe during orientation. And so I asked my still to this day bestie, Elena Silva, I'm like, what does this mean? And she goes, "Girl, your color is brown. Let me break it down for you." And it was a culture shock for me being singled out for that.
Yeah. And for me, my experience was I can remember walking into a locker room and seeing our white teammates on one side and our black teammates on the other side, and me being Hispanic. And I think there were just a handful not really knowing where to go. Right. And honestly, that was something I dealt with in high school as well. So, we talked about, I dealt with that in high school, dealt with that in college and in this space. And again, you don't know where exactly you fit in. And then Andy too, we talked about, our careers and how, we've experienced that feeling has followed me to the boardroom, right? Again, walking in, you don't really see people that look like us. So, a challenge, I think I probably think about it more now than I did back then, right? Because I was so focused on my sport. But it certainly, played a part and certainly something that, we were aware of.
Gloria, in such a polarized time in our lives in this country, how much can sports help bridge that gap and help everyone that comes from so many different backgrounds, ethnicities, and at times nationalities from around the globe, help bridge that understanding of where people come from and different experiences that have to obviously come together as a common goal, whether it's in a locker room or in an administrative office?
I love that question because it's everything I love about sport, right? It's teamwork. It's bringing together folks that would never ordinarily spend that much time together or might never be friends for a common goal. It's the front porch to our universities, which typically pride themselves on diversity and inclusion of differing thoughts and perspectives. And then lastly, we have the platform, right? We have a portal to the rest of the world that brings in fans and general public that sees our young people working together as a team from all different backgrounds. But also, I think our young people today are starting to learn to use that platform, whether it's patches on uniforms, where it's signaling their political beliefs around the national anthem. It's just become a really, as you put it, space where many, many different types of people come together for a common good, but also show that folks work together and what they believe in. And I just think that is the power of sport.
Ben, one thing that is always consistently misrepresented in our public space is the fact that Hispanics are not monolithic. Cubans, tend to be on one political spectrum. Puerto Ricans could be on another. New Mexicans actually consider themselves, I live there, I'm married to one, they consider themselves their own deal. They're not tied to Mexico, they're not tied somewhere else, they're New Mexican. And obviously there are Mexican Americans, and I could go on and on and on. And it's just such a wide swath of ideas and at times ideologies and cultures. How do you deal with that it all gets sort of labeled as one? Oh, you're Hispanic, and here's how you're supposed to act, think, do what, and even look. Ben?
Yeah. So we actually talk about that quite a bit in La Casa, right? And so I'll just give you a quick update on our founding members, right? We have some that are Puerto Rican, we have some that are Mexican, we have some that are Panamanian, we have some that speak Spanish, others that don't speak Spanish, right? Second or third generation in this country. So, for us, it's first, let's get us all in a room. Let's talk about some of the shared experiences that we have. But like to your point, let's also learn about some of the experiences that maybe I don't have as, a third generation Puerto Rican kid from New York, right? That's someone who's the first generation and first time going to college in their family and all that. So for us, it's first bring them together. Let's talk about it. Let's see what those experiences are, and know that there are a lot of people out there that share our experience as well, right? So again, there's a lot that we still get to in the La Casa group, but it's certainly something again that we're aware of. And when we tell other people, like we try to educate them on those differences, right? Because when I was growing up in New York, I can remember people referring to me as Mexican all the time, and I was Puerto Rican, right? And so again, just letting them know that there are differences, and there's a certain amount of education that I think is incumbent on us, but we also want to provide resources for people to do their own, education, right, and teach themselves some of these things.
So I want you to define La Casa here in a moment. Gloria, if you could answer that same question.
Yeah, and I think, it's hard to grapple even for me because I'm half Mexican, a quarter Filipino, and a quarter Irish, and it's, how do you describe, it never really was a thing. I mean, it's always been me and underlying my career, but until I got the commissioner job and I had to really craft a press release about it, we spent some time. Is it Mexican American? Is it Latino? Is it Latinx? Like it just, what was the right note to strike? You don't want all these words on the head of a press release. And so it's just that there is something there that we're all still trying to figure out, what to call it.
Well, and by the way, it's okay to be sort of, generations to be sort of mixed, and that's okay. Not everyone has to fit into a little, same square box. So let's go back to La Casa. Let's break it down. What is it? What does it do? And where are we at in terms of its effectiveness? Let's start it off, Ben.
Well, so full disclosure, it's still in its infancy.
Okay.
Right? So we launched this in June, this past June. Been working on it for about a year and a half. It's a side project, right? So we all have our full-time jobs. But in short, our vision is to help grow Hispanic representation throughout collegiate athletics. And that's both for administrators and student athletes. And so the idea came about, I was at the Black Student Athlete Summit, which is held annually at the University of Texas, Austin. And they've been doing it for, I think, 5 or 6 years now. And I went in January of 20, brought 4 student athletes, Black student athletes with us. And they were so empowered by the event, right? Seeing themselves represented at the highest levels of athletics and, with ADs and vice presidents of universities and coaches and all that, right? So I remember talking to them and just seeing how excited they were that they had to be, or that they had a chance to be part of this. And I went back to my hotel room that first night, and I remember saying to myself, man, this is great. But does anything like this exist for people that look like me? And so I started doing some research. I couldn't find anything. And that's when I started to reach out to a bunch of different people across the industry. And each one of them has said, Ben, I love the idea. It does not currently exist. And Gloria, again, whether you know it or remember it or not, we had a conversation I feel like a couple years ago now, right before this thing really got started. And you played a big part, at least for me, in influencing me and encouraging me to go with this, right? And so that's where it was born from, wanting to really replicate what the Black Student Athlete Summit has done. And that goes back to what I mentioned before about other groups are doing it well, right? And so now I think is our chance to do that. And so again, we want to grow representation. We want to provide professional development opportunities for administrators. We want to provide spaces for student athletes to share their own experiences. And ultimately too, I think we want to build towards a conference similar to the Black Student Athlete Summit, hopefully a year from now, right? Where we can bring people together for a day, day and a half, share some research, share some best practices and ways to better support the Hispanic community in terms of being student athletes. And then last thing I'll say too is also encourage high school student athletes to go out and realize, hey, you don't have to just do, there's no one right way to do something. In other words, a lot of Hispanics are represented at the community college level, right? Or the junior college level. And if that's what they want to do, that's great. There's no knock on that. But if you do have aspirations of playing Division I, right? Like pursue that, right? Let's provide them resources to help them and their parents to put themselves in a situation in which they can take advantage of those opportunities. So all of that, I know that's a lot, but all of that is kind of the hopes for La Casa. So we're getting there. We're getting there.
So Gloria, for women though, I mean, I can think off the top of my head, obviously, Frank Martin's a Final Four men's basketball coach. Barry Alvarez, obviously, who was an incredibly successful football coach and then AD at Wisconsin. Dan Guerrero, who just retired from UCLA. These are all men. Where is that, vacuum of female ADs, commissioners, really high profile head coaches? I mean, where's the pipeline right now?
Yeah, well, we're here. Ben mentioned Lisa Campos at San Antonio. You got Irma Garcia up there in New York. You got Desiree Reed-Francois, who's just named AD at Missouri. And so, yeah, we're here. There's a handful. I'm not sure about the coaching ranks. I haven't really dug deep there yet.
If I could add, right, that there are organizations. So I think what has made La Casa, let's just say successful, right, to this point, is the niche that we've carved out in the college athletic space. Okay, so this, although it hadn't existed in terms of college athletics, there are organizations for professional sports. There are organizations for Hispanic coaches, right? And so again, I think it's part of what we like to do is provide a platform to highlight those groups as well. So that, Andy, when you asked us that question, again, a year from now, again, we can say, hey, I've got so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. But again, it'll take some time. It won't happen overnight, but those groups do exist. And it's going to be on us, I think, to kind of come together and highlight each other, right? So they're out there. And last thing I'll say too, and Gloria mentioned it, it's about being intentional. And just like anything else that we try to do in the DEI space, let's go find them. They're out there. And I think it's also important for, people like Gloria and myself to grab some of those younger people and let them know, hey, you can do this. And bring them on and show them the ropes and that kind of thing. So again, we are out there.
And I would just add to Ben's point about being intentional is, it takes work to diversify your hiring pools. And the presidents of our league adopted the first, did I go there? Was that
I was going to go right to the Russell rule. So go ahead.
You know us so well. Thank you, Andy. But, when the murder of George Floyd happened, our presidents really wanted to get intentional and make meaningful and lasting change. And we adopted league-wide a hiring commitment that we called the Russell Rule, in that you have, for every open full-time position, you have to interview at least one candidate of a historically unrepresented background. So in addition to Hispanics and Asians and ethnic minorities, if you're hiring for a men's coaching position and you interview a woman in the college space, that's an absolutely unrepresented class. So we're first looking at scrubbing our first cohort of data, but I'm really inspired by the numbers I'm seeing so far. They're not ready for public distribution yet, but they're looking pretty good.
And look, we saw this in the latest coaching carousel on the men's basketball side in the spring, where there was a concerted effort to diversify hiring pools. And there was a significant uptick in terms of African Americans hired this past coaching carousel. But I think it certainly lags, not just in the head coaching pools in various sports, but also working their way up. And that's why I think, these expanding, staffs for various sports will help get former athletes or those that want to get into the coaching profession at least that experience, because no one's expecting just handouts here. You got to obviously earn it, but you at least have to have the opportunity to earn it and then get an interview and then see if you're the right person for the job, regardless of gender. So all of that is incredibly important. I just want to go back to this and circle back, Ben, to how critical it is. You mentioned the boardroom, and I know we're using that sort of just as an umbrella term, but just how much that matters, when you're at Georgia Southern, as you said, when you're at Stony Brook in a football locker room. What does it matter when someone of color who is brown skinned can walk in there and represent so that everyone else in the room knows, okay, this ethnicity is being represented here. They've got a seat at the table, for lack of a better term, in this locker room and in this administration.
Yeah, when I got into the business, a goal of mine is to be an athletics director one day, and to be able to point to some of these folks that have made it, I think is just encouraging, right? If I didn't see people that look like me, perhaps that would be discouraging, right? Perhaps that would make me say, oh, well, it's not possible. But it is possible. We've seen folks at high levels, Hispanics at high levels. So to me, it means a lot to be able to point to them and know that it's possible. We're underrepresented, right? And we mentioned it before. Hispanics make up 18% of the U.S. population. Yeah, we're only 2.3% of administrators. But that 2.3%, again, I look at them and I say it's possible. Let's go get it, right? And then when we do get it, let's be really intentional about educating the folks coming after us and getting them up there. But if I didn't see anybody there, I think it'd be a lot harder for me to envision.
So Gloria, you are, working your way up within the NCAA committee structure, Men's Basketball Oversight Committee, D1 Transfer Working Group. I'm sure there's other acronyms of committees that you have served or will serve on. But how critical is it for you as the NCAA really continues to get reshaped, as we got the Constitution Committee going on, that there is a seat at the table for for everyone to have their interests heard?
Yeah, and you mentioned another one that I'm currently on, the Constitution Committee. And I think, we are a membership-driven organization. And like any board or executive governing body, you should represent the voices of your membership. And our number one stakeholders are the student athletes of the NCAA. So if they don't have people who look like them at the highest levels making decisions, considering their points of view, their experiences, you're missing a vital constituency. So in every level, from NCAA committee boards and, governance to our own boards, to our athletic departments, allowing the student athletes to have people that understand them, the diversity of background and the diversity of thought is so important in shaping what this organization is.
So we talked about administrators, coaches. How do student athletes who identify as being Hispanic in some form, how do they get into this feeder system, know this exists in some form or fashion, and be able to connect with people like you, Ben, or Gloria? Ben, start us off.
Yeah, so I would say even this right here, this is a great platform for us. So for those that are interested in learning more about La Casa, you can go to our Twitter page. It's at @la_casa, CAASA. And we have on there some information. Again, it's in its infancy, but there's still some information there for learning about ways to get involved. What we'd like to do, Andy, specifically for the student athletes, is get these affinity groups around different campuses across the country, right? So having a Hispanic serving affinity group, and let's begin to have these conversations. And then for us, we want to build out that list. We want to provide educational series for student athletes. Anyone that's interested in working in college athletics, we want to be able to show them the ropes, if you will. So that's part of that. Networking opportunities, mentor programs, right? These are all lofty goals, and we will get there, right? It's not right now, but that's something that we're working on. Strategic planning right now is going on. And so anyways, long story short, we want to create those opportunities, connect student athletes to professionals like Gloria and others, in hopes that we can, again, grow representation.
Gloria, giving you the last word here, Gloria.
Excellent. Thank you so much. No, I appreciate the shining the spotlight, all the work that Ben is doing. I admit I took a stab at trying to organize early in my career, but there just weren't as many of us. I wasn't at that place where I had support and resources, admin, assistants, interns. So I think organizing and providing the platform is definitely the first step, but then being accessible to folks and taking the calls and taking the coffees and opening the door to show what these jobs are. There are a lot of folks that don't understand all the myriad of jobs in college athletics, but at the end of the day, they're great jobs, even in today's climate. And on our worst day, we're still working with phenomenal young people in sport. What gets better than that?
That's right. Well, I appreciate it, Gloria and Ben. You guys are doing wonderful work, and obviously setting a high standard, but a great one for those to follow behind you. Gloria for Ben, and someone else will be following up from Ben as you each go throughout the course of your careers. Appreciate all of you. And just one more time, Ben, where can people find information of La Casa? Just give another shout out for it.
Yeah, so La Casa on Twitter at @la_casa, CAASA, or you can shoot us an email, lacasainfo@gmail.com.
There we go. All right, Gloria and Ben, appreciate it. And as always, you can go to ncaa.org/social series, where all our social series are archived. We've been certainly going at this for quite some time. We're going to continue tackling all the topics across college athletics. Thanks for watching, everyone.